Kiss of Death by Neon Zangetsu, Chapter 2, Kiss of Hope, Chapter 2, Part 2. No, 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 Salem wailed. Get away! What was this thing? The Queen of the Grim flailed backwards, sparks skittering from her fingertips as she fought off her attacker. In hindsight, perhaps fought was too strong of a word. Regardless, her power availed her not. For all her might and magic, the damned thing refused to let go of her. Worse, she couldn't shock the blasted creature, because that would mean electrocuting herself. She had no desire to maim her body just to pry it loose either. Not that she could. Cease at once! She glared bloody red daggers at it. If you don't, I swear I will make sushi out of you and your descendants. If it was at all fazed by her threats, the octopus didn't care. Ghastly red thing only clung on tighter to her limb. Really, what was it even doing here? This wasn't the ocean. Had it crawled upstream or something? Even as she debated that, a lone eye rolled up to regard her curiously, and Salem felt something gibber helplessly deep inside her. Squishy, slimy. Nope. All the nope. Definitely nope. All her fire and fury quivering in the face of an unsightly horror such as this. She couldn't even bring herself to touch it, so she flailed her arm again. To no avail, the creature inched upward toward her shoulder. Salem absolutely hissed, "Let me go now!" "Don't worry, I've got you." Strong hands reached over her shoulders, grasping the ghastly creature by the head, and pried the grasping suckers off her arm. A familiar scent flooded her nose as she stepped back into a broad chest. Her hands flailed again, but this time for a different reason altogether. She knew who was standing behind her. She didn't know. She didn't even have to look. The hell's this guy doing here anyway? Naruto regarded the cephalopod in his grasp with narrow eyes. "This ain't salt water," that said. The tentacled creature quailed in his grasp. "Weren't you being a little grabby?" "Why, I think he was." Salem's smile was just a touch saccharine. "Be a dear and hold him still, won't you?" "Sure thing." Naruto held his arm out. Salem snapped her fingers, conjuring a sphere of fire to her right hand. Beneath her smoldering gaze and faced with such a flame, the octopus all but wilted. In all fairness, it lacked the means to communicate, and thus couldn't shout to convey the terror it was feeling in that moment. Salem suspected she knew what it was thinking. Had it the strength to do so, she believed it would be raising his arm in surrender. She could just imagine its voice now. "Mercy, my lady." Her lips twitched. "No." Her hand scythed down and it was gone. "Well, that's done." Naruto sighed, considering the charred remnants of the poor creature. "Glad I could help." "My hero," Salem snarked. "Hey, it worked, didn't it?" He smirked back. She returned to face him with a smile and accidentally bumped up against a bare hip brushing his. Naruto's smile vanished as he was viciously reminded of her lack of clothing. With a fresh flush of strange girlish desire to slap him for seeing her naked, she suppressed it ruthlessly, choking it down before it could manifest further. Why do such a thing? They were both adults here. Besides, he'd come to her rescue in her moment of weakness. She knew he had no ill intentions. If anything, the ill intentions were hers. Red orbs blinked up at him through dawn lashes, all lice flitted down to her full lips. Something stirred in the air, and Salem's heart began to pound wildly in her ears, drowning everything else out. She could hear nothing more, not the birds in the sky above, not the gentle rush of the water, not even her own shallow breathing. Thoughts of dark pleasure burned in her veins, wild and intent. She could do nothing to calm them. Her blood was well and truly up. Her tongue flitted out, linking her lips. Naruto saw it and stiffened on a certain level. Salem was aware how she must look in this moment, just as she knew the effect she must have on him. Pale strands of damp hair concealed her breasts. One hand held between her legs to preserve her modesty. She was equally aware of him too. All lean, quartered muscle, body slipped down from his dip in the river. Her eyes drifted lower. "Oh, oh my, good gods, you could grind meat on those. Gah, bad girl, control yourself." Her instincts were not so easily quelled. Now, a voice hissed in the back of her mind. Take him! This is your moment. Do it! Do it now! He won't be here forever! And there it was, the ugly truth. Salem didn't want to admit it, but she didn't long for a simple lay any more. Rather, she did, but she didn't want things to end there. She wanted something that would last, but she couldn't have that now, could she? The gods had seen to such matters. Damn them! She could either have a pleasant memory or none at all. Something snapped. Belatedly she realized it wasn't her mind, but the very last thread of self-control she'd been clinging on to all these years. He could die tomorrow for all she knew, perish the way Ozma had. I'm sick of this. Too late she realized she'd spoken the words out loud because his eyes widened. Sick of what? Naruto asked. Everything. Despair burst out of her in a snarl, and she glared up at him. Uh, of this curse, of being the lonely girl in the lonely tower, of living a lonely life. Here at last her arms moved as she hung her head, hands balling into pale fists at her sides. I'm tired of being alone. She stepped into him. Of so very many things. Her eyes snapped back to him again, burning with flames. I almost wish I'd never met you. Huh? That got a startled blink from him. Wait, you're cursed? No, no, no. No interruptions. She was ranting. Hush. I was miserable before I met you. Salem's fingers pressed against his lips, muffling his words. I had all but given up hope. You gave it back to me. You. That same digit stabbed itself against his skull now, seeking the brain matter behind it. You made me feel this way. This is all your fault. He could have challenged her, could have shouted her down in any number of ways. She saw it in his eyes. He chose not to. She adored him for that. Oh God, she wanted him. Was she truly that desperate? It hadn't even been 24 hours. What the devil was wrong with her? She knew the answer, of course. She simply didn't want to admit it. He was like her, the outcast, the forgotten, the exile. If that didn't make him a kindred spirit, she didn't know what could. He was literally the last man on earth. Even if he weren't, he'd stretched out his hand to her in her darkest hour and pulled her in the light. That meant something, damn it. Pale hands grabbed Naruto by the shoulders, pulling him close. I'll be frank. Her words were the fiercest whisper now, heard by him alone. I'm sick of dancing around this. I want to kiss you. No, I am going to knock you down and make sweet, sweet love to you if you don't speak up in the next 3 seconds. She gave him a shove before folding both arms before her bare bosom. This is your one and only chance to walk away. With that said, Salem forced herself to step back and give him a chance to retreat. Please don't take it. The voice came back with a vengeance, crying the tears she refused to shed. I don't want to be alone anymore. It hurts. Make it stop, please. Don't push me away. Well, she awaited his judgment fitfully. Make your choice. Naruto hung his head. Well, when you put it like that. Still the silence stretched on, seconds spiraling endlessly into oblivion. Salem tapped her fingers against her crossed arms, trying to still the frantic beating of her heart. She'd thrown the impetus of change in his hands now. Whatever decision the wayward warrior made would be his own. Without warning, he scratched the back of his head and raised his gaze to show her a rueful smile. For all her sorcery, she couldn't tell what it meant. That terrified her. For the first time she wondered when, how, she'd allow herself to come undone. I think I already have. Her smile cracked. You have? To be fair, his smile turned a touch sheepish. I know next to nothing about romance. Oh, her heart turned to stone and fractured all at once. Dozens of tiny cracks etched itself into its hardened surface. If it's a partner you're looking for, I'm not sure I'd be a good one. Fine. This was fine. She would be an adult about this. She wouldn't fall to pieces because the only person under to understand her had forsaken her. However, all those tiny cracks mended themselves in an instant. Salem's head wiped around, and she tried in vain to hide the brief ember of hope that sprang to life in her eyes. If you're happy with a broken someone like me, Naruto coughed into a fist. I'm willing to try. Salem needed no further provocation than that. Those words sealed her fate. Broken. What was wrong with being broken? She was broken too. She stepped in and pressed her mouth to his. Naruto's world went white. There could be no other word for it. One moment he was gazing, nearly crying Salem. In the next, Her face lit up and she stepped into his arms. With a single vicious whisper, she stepped in and molded her mouth against his. In that moment, a single word passed between the two of them. He wasn't the one to speak it. Mine. Her lips were soft against his, tasting faintly of berries and hidden secrets, infinitely yielding yet firm all the same. Salem was a beautiful woman, and at the end of the day he was but a man. He was attractive, to be sure, there could be no denying that, but it wasn't her beauty that drew him in, not even her tears. Her words did all that and more. Perhaps had he possessed the full breadth of his memories he might have reacted differently, might have panicked like a boy. Now he was almost grateful he still had a few screws loose. He couldn't fight off the urge to keep her close. Tan arms wrapped around her pale waist and drew her close, not enough to hurt or otherwise crush her, just hold her. His gesture emboldened the Queen of Grimm, and more than he expected. She made a noise of delight, flung her arms around his neck, and leaned in fully, angling her head to deepen the chaste kiss. When she pulled away to breathe, he chased her, mouth crashing against hers. Red eyes flew wide open. This time the sound she offered reminded him of some dark beast, ancient and hungry. Somewhere in the back of his mind Kerma scoffed, rolling his eyes. Nope, not dealing with this. Wake me when it's over. A familiar wolf howled in the distance, and Salem pulled away with a long-suffering sigh. Made a friend, have you? Her lips glistening wetly, eyes burning dark with lust. Should I be jealous? Eh, of a giant bear wolf following me around like a lost puppy? He chuckled. Nah, you really shouldn't. Hmm. She pressed her head against his chest. There are things I should tell you, but not now. How was that kiss? Wonderful, heart-stopping, amazing, incredible. Naruto didn't have enough words to describe it. He'd never even kissed before, and no, he couldn't recall that incident. Anyone who said otherwise was spreading vicious lies and propaganda. She'd ignited memories in him he didn't even know he had. He wasn't sure if it was love or just lust. Regardless, he wanted to explore more of it with her. I'm not sure. He lied horribly. Can I have another? Salem hummed and leaned in again. As many as you want. For all the gaps in his memory, Naruto did best to keep Salem entertained. He didn't leave her side, not once. If anything, he proved himself a good company, quick to fill awkward silence with conversation, always ready with an easy laugh and a quick smile. Their courtship was a slow thing, almost tentative really, but as 1 year bled into 2, followed by 3, then 4, and finally 5, Salem began to notice things. She could see him aging soon. He wasn't a boy anymore, but a young man in his early 20s, and he aged well. Really, he did, but he still aged. Fear began to creep over her. How much longer would he last? 50 more years? 60? 70 if she was lucky? Naruto swore up and down that he would last far longer than that, thanks to his genes, but still, the fear persisted. It bedeviled her to no end. It ate away at her from the inside, plaguing her every thought. She knew his time was limited, and this, what they had, was wonderful. She couldn't bear to give it up. She'd almost forgotten what it was like to be alone. He found a dozen different ways to entertain her every day, and she learned something new at least once a week. It was a good life, simple, pure. When he looked at her, he saw not a monster, but a woman. She loved him for that. Oh gods, she loved him. Her feelings for Ozma, what they had together, would always be a part of her, but she didn't want to go back to her lonely vigil. Not now, perhaps not ever. But time was a cruel foe. What fate could not take from her, it sought to undo through more insidious means. There was nothing she could do to stop it. Immortality she may well be, and immune to ravages of time, but Naruto was not. One day he would die, one day he would leave her alone, and when that day came, she knew she would shatter. Sure enough, it came to a head. It took years, but Salem's emotions reached the boiling point all the same, through no fault of her own. In hindsight, she wasn't sure what compelled her to bring him to the Grimlands. Was it a whim on her part? An accident, perhaps? Salem did not believe in fate, and she loathed the idea of destiny. She meant to show him where she had been changed, and she did. She told him the truth. She told him everything, laid her every sin bare to him. For her loss of her curse, she held nothing back. All this she did, expecting anger and fear, derision and concern. When he accepted her wholeheartedly, she broke. "You cannot be real!" Naruto looked away from the pool of darkness with a frown as she backed away from him. "How so? I wiped out the human race." She flung up her arms. "Yet you'd forgive me for that? How? Why? I'm I'm irremovable." His blond brow rose. "Did you intend to get those people killed?" She faltered. "No, but still, do you regret it?" Or wince? "Yes." "You made a mistake." Naruto stepped forward and took her hand in his. "Yes, it was a very big mistake, and it changed a lot of things, but that's life." His fingers squeezed hers, tan threading pale between pale. "Nobody's perfect. We all fall down. We all screw up." She whimpered, and he pressed his forehead to hers. "It's in the getting back up again, what we do afterwards, that defines who we are." Blue eyes bored into hers. "You want to be a good person, Salem. You just never had the chance." "And what do you want from me?" The words burst from her in a shout. "I already told you. Nothing. The question you need to ask yourself is this." He flicked her forehead. "What do you want? Are you happy?" "No!" Harsh bitter tears stung her eyes. "You won't live forever. You're only human. You'll die sooner or later." "Salem, I don't even have any gray hair yet." He tugged a stray strand of blonde loose from his scalp. "See, not a single one." When her expression didn't waver, he blew out a sigh. "I don't know what you want me to say here. I'm probably gonna live to be 100 at least, maybe even longer." Any other day she would have believed him. Now, "But you won't live forever." She laughed hysterically. Her fears had her now, throttling all logic, all reason, every semblance of sense. "You'll leave, or you'll die, and I'll be alone. Say you won't." He looked away, and it was good as demanding him. "You may be strong, but you're not immortal." Pale hands rose to cup her head as her eyes watered. "You'll pass on, and I can't." Her Here at last her voice broke, and she doubled over, clutching herself. "No, it's too much. I can't be alone again." "You know what?" Naruto considered her words, his nose wrinkled, then he stood. "You're right. I will die." Salem frowned when he pulled his fingers from hers. It hurt her more than words. Blue eyes strayed to the pool of darkness only yards away. "Funny thing, though, I think I see a way to fix that." Salem grabbed at him. "Don't you dare." Naruto did dare. He dove forward. Splash! It didn't hurt. Naruto blinked, squinting against the murky waters to no avail. He saw only shadows. From what Salem had told him, there should be terrible pain, yet he felt nothing of that, nothing. Oh, wait, there it was. There! Salem jolted back with a yelp as a clenched fist burst through the surface of the pool, mere inches from her face. Her heart skipped a beat before she realized who it belonged to. Naruto's flailed arm flailed blindly for a moment before launching onto the lip of the crater. Only another hand emerged from the muck, grasping for purchase. She balked at it for a brief moment, not quite comprehending what was happening. Then her arms moved of their own accord, and she reached out to grasp his hand. Firm fingers found hers, and with a mighty heave pulled him free. Ugh! Naruto didn't simply climb out of the pool. He crashed headlong into Salem, sending them both sprawling. Red met red, and she knew he was changed. Blue eyes had bled scarlet and black, his once healthy skin now reduced to a sickly gray shed. Veins of crimson crept through his whiskered cheeks, lending them those marks on an almost eerie hue, as if the corrupt had been resurrected. "Well, that wasn't so bad, was it?" He grinned. "Now we match." It took everything she had not to burst into tears. He corrupted himself for her, thrown himself into a literal pool of evil just to lengthen his life. It looked to have worked too. The Grimm were eternal after all. It wasn't a curse by any means, but his triumphant smile said he'd at least managed to achieve his goal. Still, she had to know. She must know. How do you feel? Energetic. He tilted his head and bounced once on his feet. Feel like I could run a marathon. That's all. She blinked, a worm of confusion burrowing into her breast. No violent impulses, none whatsoever. Well, his eyes flashed and she shivered as a spark of desire shot through them. I want to violently kiss you. Does that count? He delivered a bruising kiss to her lips before she could protest. Salem yielded to him with a moan, realized what he was doing, and rested herself back. He reeled her back in like a fish, hands coiling loosely around her waist, the sharp teeth nibbling the nape of her neck, planting delicate kisses against her pale flesh. Her eyes burned scarlet all over again, threatening to shatter her control, and the bastard pulled away. How's that for an answer? Her face turned crimson. Naruto? What? He sulked, but there was an impish smile tugging at his pale cheeks. Just being honest, hm? His squinted eyes narrowing to think slits. Wait a second. I think I can. Ah, there we go. As she looked on, tanned skin replaced the ghastly pallor of his flesh. Color came flooding back into his cheeks. Silver hair burned bright gold once more, literally, but that shouldn't be possible. If he could revert to how he'd been before, did that mean the same was possible for her? She asked as much. How did you? Don't know. He shrugged again. Just felt natural, like flipping a switch, you know? Naruto, Salem swallowed. You're on fire. Ah, thanks. Love you too. No, really. She pointed a pale finger at his still smoldering hair. Fire. Your hair is burning. Eh? Naruto's blue eyes swung upwards. His eyebrow shot into his hairline, even now shimmering with faint golden flames. Huh! A hand pushed through them and came away unburnt. Neat. Well, that's a side effect, and not a bad one, though. Just like that, he banished the last of her fears in the abyss. To think she'd actually doubted him. She should have known better. What had she said to her once? Fuck fate and damn destiny. Yes, that sounded rather apt right about now. Laughter tumbled from her lips, long and loud. She couldn't hold it back. She didn't even want to try. So she settled for the next best thing. She burst into tears and tackled Naruto. Hey, he laughed. Was it something I said? Salem silenced him with her lips and her hips alike.